I am 87 years old, and last winter I finally admitted that most of the tiredness I have complained about for 30 years was never once about my body. I sat down by the stove with a pencil, and I counted 6 kinds of tired. 6. Every one of them I had handed to my legs or my back or the weather or my age, and every one of them belonged somewhere else. I was not ashamed of that list, and I was not proud of it. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years, because a man will let his body take the blame for 30 years before he will look straight at the thing that is actually doing the carrying. Come sit closer to the fire. I do not want to say this next part across a room. I am not telling you an old body does not get tired. Mine does. 87 years is 87 years, and I will not pretend a man my age ought to be splitting wood in August. What I am saying is narrower. Some of my tiredness was honest work leaving my arms, and it was welcome. Some of it was another thing entirely, wearing my body's coat and answering to my body's name. I let it keep that coat a long while, because as long as it wore the coat, I never had to ask it what it wanted. My grandmother said, "The water does not get heavy. The carrying gets long." She told me that at a spring on the north side of the place, when I was 9 or 10 and had come up twice with 2 buckets complaining the second trip was heavier, she made me set them down. "Same water," she said. "Same buckets. What changed is how far you have decided you are from the house." My grandfather set the other half of it down beside her that same year, in a barn, with a hay hook in his hand. He said a man is not worn out by the load, he is worn out by the way he holds it. Her sentence and his sentence hold up every word I am about to say to you. 6 kinds of tired, and not one of them lived in my arms. The first confession is the tired that only ever started at my own door. For 4 years after my wife passed, I could put in a full day at Delbert's place, hanging gate, pulling wire, 79 years old and steady as a post. Then I would drive the mile home and come up my own steps, and by the time my hand was on that door, I could hardly get my boots off. I blamed my knees. I told people the cold had gotten into them. It was not my knees. It was that I had built the whole day to end somewhere I did not want to arrive. A lamp burning in an empty room burns the same oil as a lamp somebody is reading by. Nobody takes the oil back out because the chair was empty. What I do now is small and looks foolish from the road. I speak out loud the first minute I am inside. I say what the weather did, I say what I did. The room does not answer, and I did not ask it to. But I stopped walking into a silence and calling it my knees. Before I give you the second confession, let me set one thing down beside your chair. The native way holds 20 teachings for this stretch of the road, gathered the way I am gathering these for you tonight, and the link is in the description if you want it. No pressure at all. Your seat by this fire was never something anybody had to earn, and I will be sitting right here either way, whether it is opened or not. That is all I will say about it. An old man who stops to sell you something in the middle of telling you the truth has quit telling you the truth, and I would rather keep the truth than lose the sale. I mention it once because some things are easier to sit with slow on paper at your own table than they are to hold on to from a fire. That is the only reason it exists. And now, I will let it alone. Now, the second confession, and this one my wife could have named for me 40 years before I named it for myself. The second confession is the tired that came from agreeing. For 11 years, I sat on a supper committee at the meeting hall, and every single year I took the job of hauling and setting the tables, and every single year I did not want it. Somebody would say, "And you will do the tables again," and I would say, "That's fine." 2 words. It cost nothing to say, and I said it maybe 300 times in my life about 300 different things. I would come home from those suppers heavier than I came home from haying. That confused me for a decade. Haying is work. Saying 2 words is not work. But my grandmother said a yoke that fits is still a yoke, and a well-fitted one is worse, because a man will wear it all day without a single sore to show him where it sits. And it was never the tables. I could have set tables until midnight. It was that some part of me stood off to the side the whole evening with its arms folded, keeping a record of a thing I had agreed to and did not want. And that fellow standing off to the side is the one who was tired. He worked harder than I did. He worked the entire supper. Now I take about 4 seconds before I answer. Not to be difficult. Just long enough that the answer comes from me instead of from the habit standing behind me. And when the answer is no, I have learned to say only the no, without the little apology stapled to the end of it, because the apology is an invitation to ask me again. The third confession is the tired that sleep did not touch. There were whole years where I slept 9 hours and got up used up. I bought a different mattress. I bought a different pillow. I moved the bed to the other wall, which my wife found very funny and never let me forget. It was none of those. It was that I carried tomorrow up the stairs with me every night. Whatever I had to say to a man in the morning, I said it to the ceiling 40 times first, in 40 different arrangements, and by dawn I had already had the conversation until it was worn smooth, and I had gotten no good out of it and no rest either. A river does not rest by stopping, it rests by getting wide. So now, before I take my boots off, I say the thing out loud once, standing in the kitchen, to nobody. Just the one sentence I am dreading. I say it plain and I let it be finished. It sounds like an old fool talking to his stove. It is the cheapest night's sleep I have ever bought. The fourth confession is the tired of holding a face. Harriet, down the road, had a granddaughter married the spring after my wife died, and she asked me to come, and I went. 3 hours. I was pleasant for all 3 of them. I said the right thing to every person who came at me with their head tipped over sideways, and I meant most of it, and I never once let my face do anything my face wanted to do. I slept until noon the next day. Noon. I had not slept until noon since I was a boy with a fever. My grandfather said a man can carry a bucket a long way. It is holding it level that empties him. I do not have a fix for that one, not a whole one. But I have stopped going for 3 hours. I go for 40 minutes now, and I say so at the door on the way in, so that leaving is not a thing I have to explain when I get to the end of what I have. And once in a while, with the right person, I let the face go. It is a strange relief, like setting down a bucket you have carried so level for so long that your arm has to be reminded how to hang. The fifth confession is the tired that came from a day with no work in it. This one surprised me most, and I expect it will surprise some of you. The winter I was 81, I was told to lift nothing for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I thought, well, at least I will be rested. I have never been so tired in my life. I would sit down at 4 in the afternoon in a chair I had earned, in a warm house, having done nothing all day, and I would feel like I had been dragged behind something, because I had spent 60 years measuring the day by what came off the end of it. If nothing came off the end of it, the day did not count, and a day that does not count still has to be lived through, and living through a day that does not count is the heaviest work there is. My grandmother would have said a field lying fallow is not an idle field. It is doing the one job you cannot see, and it is doing it the whole time you are standing there calling it lazy. I had been that man at the fence line for 60 years, looking at rested ground and seeing only what it was failing to grow. I have thought since about how I must have looked at my wife's mother in her last years, sitting in the good chair by the window with her hands quiet. I never said a word to her about it. But I know what I thought, and I would like to go back and think something else. So I keep a different measure now. 1 true exchange a day. 1. If I said one honest thing to one person, or listened to one, the day counted. And my chair at 4 in the afternoon is a chair I earned. The sixth confession is the one I am least proud of, and it is the one that took the most out of me, and I hid it the longest. My brother Delbert and I did not speak for 19 years over a piece of ground and the way our father's papers were written. 19 years. He lived 11 miles from me the whole time. Now I want to be careful here, because this is the part people rush past. I did not spend 19 years being angry. Anger is a hot thing and it does not last. It burns off in a week. What I did was harder and quieter than that. Every single day in small ways I kept the thing alive. I rehearsed my side of it while I fixed fence. I chose the long road into town so I would not pass his gate. When his name came up at a supper, I would go still in a particular way. and the whole table learned to step around it, and stepping around it kept it standing. That is labor. That is a man getting up in the dark to feed a fire he says he is not tending. I used to have a soreness across my shoulders and up into my jaw, and I blamed the weather for 19 years. It went to weather, it went to age, it went to a bad mattress. It never once went where it belonged. My grandmother said you cannot carry a coal in your pocket and then blame your leg for the burning. Delbert and I made it up when we were 78 and 75 in a feed store, badly, about 4 sentences worth, neither one of us saying the thing that actually needed saying. It was not a good reconciliation. It was a poor one. And I want to tell you plainly, a poor one. Done, took a weight off me that 19 years of a beautiful one in my head never did. Naming those 6 was not the same as hating myself for them. I want to be careful with you here, because when I first wrote that list out, I did the wrong thing with it for about a month. I went around calling myself a fraud. All those years of telling people I was tired, and it turns out I was not tired the way I said I was. So I must have been lying to them, and lying to my wife, and lying to myself. That word fraud felt like honesty. It was not honesty, it was a verdict, and a verdict asks a man to lie down and serve it. A habit is a different animal. A habit only asks to be noticed. It does not ask to be renamed or forgiven or explained to anybody at a supper table. I blamed my knees. I said that's fine. I carried tomorrow up the stairs. I held my face level for 3 hours. I called a day with no work in it a wasted day, and I fed a fire for 19 years and told everyone it was the weather. Those are 6 things a man did. They are not 6 bones he was built out of. And I will not stand here and promise you that naming yours makes you lighter the same week, because sometimes you name it exactly right and you are still tired on Thursday. Nothing in me got stronger. What changed is where I set the weight down, and whether I was still telling my legs to carry a thing my legs never picked up. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl. The tired that only starts at your own door. The tired that comes from agreeing. The tired that sleep does not touch. The tired of holding your face level in company. The tired of a day that produced nothing. And the tired of a fire you have been feeding for years while calling it something else. 6, and not one of them in my arms. Now let me turn them toward your own life, because I am not the only man who ever handed a bill to his knees. Where does yours start? Is it at the road or on the steps or once the door is shut behind you? What have you said that's fine to so many times that your mouth does it without you? What are you carrying up those stairs tonight? Whose wedding? Whose funeral? Whose kitchen do you hold your face level in? What do you call a day that made nothing? And is there a gate you still go the long way around? Perhaps what has come up in you while I have been talking is the question, is it too late for me? I will not hand you a result. I do not know whether the man on the other side of your quarrel is still above ground, or whether he would come to the door, or whether the tiredness you are carrying tonight would lift by Sunday if you set it down right this minute. That is not mine to give away, and I will not pretend otherwise. Here is what the years do not take, and it is a small thing, and it is enough. You can still catch yourself handing the bill to the wrong part of you. And on the very same day you catch it, you can still make one plain, ordinary choice about it. Catching and choosing. Those 2 stay to the end. Of these 6, tell me which number is sitting on your shoulders right now. Just the number is plenty, down in the comments. I go through them late, after the lamps are out, and I take my time about it, and come back tomorrow and take this same chair. An old man who has started admitting where his tiredness actually comes from does not generally stop at 6. Until then, do the small one today. Not the whole thing, the small one today.